Here's a prediction. The Biden CDC, Fauci, and their cronies will wait until after the 4th of July holiday to announce new masking and social distancing measures. They can't stand the sight of Americans living free and determining their own fates, so they're looking for any old excuse to clamp down on us again. And when they do, just remember, this isn't about the science. It's about politics and power. Joining me now is Matt Walsh, host of The Matt Walsh Show, and Alex Berenson, author of The Unreported Truths About COVID-19 and Lockdown series. Alex, I'll start with you. This seems like they're laying the groundwork for something yet again.
Well, Janine, I sort of disagree with you a little bit. I don't think that they are crazy enough to try to introduce large-scale mask requirements or social distancing. I think this is probably a push to get, younger people and teens and ultimately children vaccinated. This is a push to try to scare parents and to try to scare kids and, and to provide cover for colleges and universities that are pushing vaccines, despite the fact that we know that there's a myocarditis risk. There may be other risks, that are sort of starting to emerge from VAERS, from the federal database. And so I think it's ludicrous. People are beginning to tune it out. I actually last week I told Tucker about that I have this new website called Substack where I'm publishing almost daily updates on COVID, on vaccines and stuff. And today's was particularly interesting in that if you're under 60 and you're not obese to morbidly obese, your rate of death from COVID, and certainly if you're under 40, is so low it almost can't be measured. Almost all the risk that we have with COVID is associated with being overweight or obese or being over 60. And I think so many Americans are aware of this intuitively at this point that they're just tuning out the health authorities. I think this is all sort of going to be irrelevant in the end, but they are going to keep pushing.
Well, I certainly hope it is irrelevant in the end. But Matt, what's your take on this? I mean, there's now talk about giving vaccines to children, and there's a lot of controversy about whether or not our kids need the vaccine. But now they're talking about it in terms of the Delta variant. What say you, Matt?
Yeah, well, there shouldn't be any controversy over whether kids need the vaccine. They don't, as was just described. I mean, this is not. We have known, this is one of the few things that we all knew about the virus from the get-go, which is, and it's something we should have all been grateful for from the beginning, that kids are not widely affected by this. Kids are not a high-risk group. I mean, imagine if they had been. Imagine if this had been reversed and kids were the highest rate affected by it. I mean, what a tragedy that would have been. And that's not the case at all. So, but we also know that the powers that be have seized a lot of extra power. They've used the coronavirus to do that. And we know that this is what history teaches us, that when you give power like this to people, they're going to be very loath to give it back. And I think that's what we're witnessing right now.
But Matt, you talk about the collateral damage of the pandemic. A police in Bloomberg revealed this shocking statistic. Those aged 25 through 34 are dying at about the same rate in 2020 as they did in 1953, a staggering 24.5% one-year increase. Drug overdoses have been the main problem. Matt, was this horrific surge in youth mortality last year due to lockdown dictates?
Obviously had a lot to do with it. We know also there's been stats about adolescent girls and the suicide rate and how that's gone up. The thing that really gets me about all of this, when we talk about vaccinating kids when they don't really need it or putting masks on them all day in school, the thing about it, I actually don't believe that the people who are pushing this are doing it out of some misguided belief that it's going to help the kids. Well, this is really about the adults. It's about the adults feeling better and feeling safer. That's why we got to put the masks on the kids and put the shots in their arm, and so that the rest of us can feel safer around those kids, even though the kids pose no risk to us. But that just makes it even more demented in my mind that we're putting them through this, not for their sake, but for our own. And I just find that infuriating.
All right, gentlemen, thank you both for this discussion.